In the glare of the 1990s, the world's luxury titans circled Milan. Billionaire bankers and French conglomerates prepared offers behind closed doors. Journalists whispered that a deal was only a matter of time, but Giorgio Armani did not flinch. He turned down calls from the world's most powerful CEOs. He refused to even sit at their tables. His competitors were falling in line. Italian brands with names as old as the country itself sold to international groups. Prada, Gucci, Versace, Fendi, one by one, they surrendered their independence. Armani instead locked his doors. He doubled down on his autonomy. Even as the numbers on the offers grew, the answer was always the same: no. To Armani, fashion was never about numbers on a spreadsheet. It was about vision, about identity, about subtlety. From his minimalist studios in Milan, Armani became a mystery. The press called him the last emperor of Italian style. At exclusive dinners, rival executives wondered what drove him. Why did he resist the buyouts that everyone else accepted? The stakes couldn't have been higher. Behind Armani's walls, he controlled everything: the cut of a jacket, the scent in his flagship stores, the lighting at runway shows. No outside investor, no board of anonymous shareholders called the shots. In an industry obsessed with trends, Armani moved at his own speed. He chose classic over flashy, independence over partnerships, restraint over excess. But this independence came at a cost. Running a global fashion house alone was exhausting. Armani's days stretched from dawn to midnight, his hands in every detail. He never took a true vacation. Some critics said he was paranoid, terrified that outsiders would dilute his name. Others called him shrewd, a master of long-term strategy. Either way, Milan watched in fascination. Luxury conglomerates kept coming back, each time with more persuasive arguments. Selling would mean billions, instant security, a seat among the world's corporate elite. Armani's answer was always polite and always final. The brand, he said, was an extension of himself. To sell would be a kind of death. The world's business press became obsessed with the question of succession. Armani had no children, no clear heir to inherit the empire. Would the company collapse when he was gone? Secretly, even his inner circle wondered how long his stubborn independence could last. How long could one man fight off the giants? Through it all, Giorgio Armani remained a riddle. He rarely gave interviews. When he did, his words were measured, careful, sometimes cryptic. He spoke more with fabric than with speeches. Insiders described him as both warm and distant. He inspired intense loyalty and deep fear. In fashion, his approval meant everything. His disapproval could end a career overnight. Some said Armani was haunted by the fate of other Italian houses, run over by foreign investors, their founders pushed aside, their visions erased. He'd seen it happen before. He swore it would never happen to him. In Milan, rumors spread that he kept buyout letters in a drawer, never reading them. Others claimed he wrote back, declining every offer with a handwritten note. Only a few people knew the truth. Armani himself didn't care to clarify. The more he resisted, the more legendary he became. Young designers saw him as a model of independence. Older rivals saw him as outdated, a relic from a vanished Italy. But Giorgio Armani didn't listen to either camp. He set his own pace. He made his own rules. Many wondered what kind of man could resist so much money and power. What did Armani see in his brand that others missed? Why did he value control over riches? In the offices of Paris and London, executives shook their heads in disbelief. For Armani, the answer was simple. Fashion wasn't just business. It was a reflection of his soul, his values, his vision of beauty. To sell, it would mean surrendering everything he had built. No amount of money could buy that. As the decade drew on, the questions only intensified. Would Giorgio Armani eventually join the other fallen empires, or was he truly unbreakable? The answer for now was written in the gleam of a perfectly cut jacket. In the shadow of Milan's skyline, Armani stood alone, last of his kind, master of his fate. But how does a boy from Piacenza, once a window dresser in a department store, become the last emperor of Italian fashion? That is where our story truly begins. Chapter 2: From Piacenza to Milan, Origins of a Visionary. Piacenza, 1934. In the quiet, foggy regions of northern Italy, Giorgio Armani is born into a world marked by war and scarcity. His father works for a transport company, while his mother keeps the family together. Italy is tense, money is tight, and every corner holds echoes of conflict. Armani's childhood is shaped by rationing and blackouts, by the disciplined routine of post-war life. From an early age, Armani feels out of place. He likes beauty in small things, the neat fold of a shirt, the cool gleam of glass in sunlight. On Sundays, he studies the silhouettes of parishioners crowding into church, tracing the lines of their coats and hats. Fashion is not yet a word he knows, but harmony and order draw him in. His parents expect sensible ambitions. For a while, Armani tries to meet them. He enrolls in medical school in Milan. The city is grey and vast, humming with possibility, but medicine is unforgiving. Armani sits through anatomy lectures, but something inside refuses to settle. He's fascinated by structure and shape, but not the kind found in textbooks. Mandatory military service interrupts his studies. The barracks are a shock, discipline is harsh, and individuality is suppressed. Nights are spent in quiet reflection, staring at the ceiling, dreaming of another life. The army tries to mold him, but Armani grows certain that he does not belong. He is searching for a place where aesthetics matter as much as discipline. Discharged and uncertain, Armani wanders the streets of Milan. The city's chaos is intimidating, but it pulses with energy that calls to him. He walks past grand windows at La Rinascente, Milan's legendary department store. To Armani, these windows are not just displays, they are silent stages where stories are told in fabric and light. He applies for a job at La Rinascente. The position is modest, window dresser and buyer, but Armani sees opportunity where others see routine. He learns how clothes behave in the glare of a spotlight, how colors play with emotion, how mannequins can be transformed into objects of desire. He studies customers from behind the glass, what they glance at, what they hesitate to touch, what draws them inside. Armani is methodical, but also quietly rebellious. He begins experimenting with arrangements, ignoring the usual rules. Sometimes he places a coat backward or lets a dress billow unnaturally. Shoppers stop in their tracks. Store managers are divided, some are enchanted, others annoyed at his refusal to follow guidelines. La Rinascente becomes Armani's private classroom. He learns from the best buyers, watching how they select items from Paris or London. He notes which fabrics win approval. He listens to hushed negotiations in the back offices, absorbing the business of fashion as much as the artistry. The more he learns, the hungrier he becomes. At home, his family worries about his unconventional path. Friends don't understand why he left medicine for mannequins. Armani refuses to explain himself. For him, dressing a window is not just a job, it is a way to control a world of chaos, to impose his own order and elegance. He wakes early, studies the latest Parisian trends, sketches in notebooks late into the night. Each display is a new experiment, a new challenge. It is here, among bolts of fabric and the clatter of hangers, that Armani discovers his fascination with style. He becomes obsessed with the idea that clothing shapes identity, that a suit or a dress can alter a person's destiny. He sees fashion as silent communication, a language without words, full of nuance and possibility. While others see the store as just another stopover, Armani senses something bigger. He is drawn to designers who move through the building, trailing patterns and gossip in their wake. Their presence stirs something in him. He wants more than to dress windows. He wants to invent what goes inside them. One late evening, as the last customers file out, Armani stands in front of his latest display. He scans every detail, the drape of a jacket, the interplay of shadow and fabric, the way a simple scarf adds structure. For a moment, the world outside fades. He imagines a life devoted not just to showing beauty, but creating it. Milan's fashion elite don't notice him yet. The city is dominated by established names, and Armani is just a junior employee. He is patient, but his ambition is quietly relentless. He saves every lira, spends weekends sketching, and dreams of one day escaping the constraints of retail. Every window he dresses is a silent audition, every satisfied customer a step closer to something he cannot yet define. At La Rinascente, Armani makes his first important connections. Designers, buyers, and editors drift through, and Armani listens intently. He picks up on trends before they have names, senses changes before they become headlines. His instincts sharpen with every season. He also learns the limits of conformity. Store policies and senior managers insist on traditions, on proven formulas. Armani starts to bristle at these demands. He wants to challenge conventions, to rewrite the rules. In a city that worships the old masters, Armani is beginning to dream of a future that looks nothing like the past. Still, he keeps working. Each day is a small act of rebellion. He refines his taste, sharpens his sense of color and cut. When he walks through Milan at night, he looks not at monuments, but at the posture of strangers, the swing of a skirt, the line of a sleeve. He wonders how he would do things differently if only given the chance. The years at La Rinascente are more than an apprenticeship. They are a crucible, testing Armani's patience and resolve. He sees how quickly trends fade, how easily success can turn to failure. He learns to trust his own eye above all else. By the time the 1960s dawn, Armani stands at a crossroads. He is no longer content with mere displays. The urge to create his own designs is too powerful to ignore. He wants to move from the background to the heart of Milan's fashion world. The city is ready for something new, even if it doesn't know it yet. He begins to sketch in earnest, filling notebooks with silhouettes and ideas. He dreams of soft shoulders, elegant lines, a style that breaks free from the stiffness of tradition. Armani is not yet a legend, not yet the master of his own domain, but the path is set. In the cool mornings before work, he stands at his window, watching Milan awaken. He is still just a window dresser in the eyes of the world. In his mind, he is already shaping silhouettes that will one day define Italian elegance. The next chapter of Armani's life will not be written behind glass. For now, all anyone can see is a determined young man refusing to be ordinary. But under the surface, the revolution has already begun. Chapter 3: A Designer in the Shadows. Opportunity rarely announces itself with fanfare. For Giorgio Armani, it arrives as an unremarkable phone call. The year is the late 1960s. A colleague from Milan suggests that Armani meet with Nino Cerruti, a respected textile magnate. Cerruti is seeking a new designer for his menswear line, Hitman. Armani arrives at the Cerruti factory, far removed from the glamour of city storefronts. The air is thick with the scent of wool and dye. Workers move with practiced efficiency, rolling bolts of fabric, tending to machines. Armani is quiet during his first walk through the factory floor. He observes everything: the rhythm of production, the raw materials, the relentless pursuit of perfection. Cerruti himself is an imposing figure, stern but fair, possessed of a deep respect for craft. He recognizes something in Armani's reserved demeanor, a seriousness that sets him apart. Hitman is not haute couture. It is ready-to-wear, meant for active modern men, but the garments are still shaped by the old codes of tailoring. Armani quickly learns that every seam, every collar must answer to tradition and efficiency at once. There is no room for vanity. Armani listens more than he speaks. He studies sketches, samples, and the precise way fabric drapes over mannequins. He begins to understand the invisible architecture that holds a jacket together. At first, his contributions are modest, minor adjustments to lapels, a softer construction for a blazer, a suggestion of color more muted than the rest. But his small changes begin to catch attention. The suits feel lighter, more relaxed, yet never careless. Armani's vision, though still measured, starts to slip quietly into the Hitman collections. He works long hours, often alone after the workshop empties. He dismantles finished garments, studying their insides, tracing their structure with practiced fingers. What he cannot change externally, he experiments with in secret sketches and makeshift prototypes. The Cerruti years are a masterclass in both restraint and ambition. Armani is given freedom, but only within narrow boundaries. The Hitman line must answer to market realities and management expectations. Each season, his ideas are filtered through commercial needs, pared down by the demands of mass production. Yet these boundaries become a strange kind of discipline. Armani learns to pursue clarity and function. He discovers the elegance of simplicity, how to eliminate excess without losing soul. The Hitman years forge his signature style, masculine but never aggressive, soft but never shapeless. Cerruti encourages Armani, but there is always a ceiling to how far he can go. Armani becomes known for his subtlety. Fashion insiders begin to take notice, but his name remains in the background. His friends see the change in him. Armani speaks more confidently, debates design choices with conviction. Yet at night, the frustration grows. He dreams of collections with his own name on the label. At Hitman, his best concepts are sometimes set aside in favor of safer options. The machinery of the fashion business is relentless. Even the smallest risk can feel dangerous. More than once, he watches his sketches gather dust, rejected for being too radical. He feels a growing ache, a longing for true authorship. Colleagues describe him as driven, even restless. Armani takes solace in quiet walks through Milan. He observes the people, their pace, the changing city. These moments feed his imagination. He sees possibility everywhere, in the cut of a stranger's coat, the tilt of a hat, a flash of color in the rain. Back at the factory, Armani tries to push boundaries from within. He proposes new fabric blends, softer shoulders, a more natural silhouette. Some ideas are accepted, others politely ignored. He learns the politics of persuasion. His confidence grows with every small victory. Even so, Armani knows he is still just a designer in the shadows. The real decisions belong to others. His name does not yet appear on the door. He begins to study the fashion world beyond Cerruti. He watches as designers like Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Cardin transform their own labels into global powerhouses. They dare to challenge Parisian tradition. Armani envies their courage, their control over every detail. He sees that fashion is no longer just about craft. It is also about identity, about the promise of something new. His frustration becomes motivation. He keeps a notebook close at hand, filling it with sketches, fabric swatches, observations from the street. Each page is a step closer to independence, a silent act of rebellion. Friends warn him that Milan fashion is a closed circle. Only those with pedigree or powerful backers succeed. Armani is undeterred. He believes that clothes should serve the person, not the other way around. In his private dreams, he imagines a fashion house that puts simplicity and honesty above spectacle. He wants to make clothes people really wear, garments that feel as good as they look. At Hitman, Armani gains not just technical skill, but also a network. He meets buyers, models, editors, suppliers. Quietly, he builds relationships. Some of these contacts will prove crucial in the years to come. Still, the daily grind weighs on him. He feels the urge to break free grow stronger with every season. The more Armani learns, the more he feels confined. The world beyond Hitman calls to him. Rumors circulate in Milan about a revolution in menswear. New names, new attitudes, a hunger for change. Armani senses that his moment may be near, but timing is everything. The fashion industry punishes impatience. He watches, he waits, refining his vision. His friends notice his eyes are often far away, always measuring, always imagining. One evening, after another long day at the factory, Armani stands beneath the fluorescent lights and studies his reflection in a darkened window. Is he simply shaping garments for others, or is he quietly shaping his own destiny? The question lingers as he turns out the light, closing the door on another day. Tomorrow will bring more sketches, more compromises, more longing for something that is truly his. The world outside is changing, even if the rules of Milanese fashion seem set in stone. For Armani, the question is no longer if he will step into the spotlight. The only question is when. Chapter 4: The Birth of Giorgio Armani S.p.A. It begins not with a grand entrance, but with a conversation in a Milanese bar. Armani, restless, sketches on a napkin. Sergio Galeotti, his confidant and business partner, leans in closer. There is talk of risk, of leaving the security of other people's houses behind. There is talk of independence. Neither man looks the part of the typical entrepreneur. Armani is quiet, famously reserved. Galeotti is more forceful, his optimism almost reckless. But together, their ambitions are explosive. Galeotti sees what Armani sometimes cannot. He understands that talent alone will not be enough. Timing, connections, and nerve will matter just as much. Their plan forms slowly. For months, the pair work late into the night. Galeotti crunches numbers, makes phone calls, arranges introductions. Armani sketches, refines, and dreams. Friends wonder aloud if they're chasing a fantasy. Few designers have tried to strike out on their own in this way, and even fewer have survived. In 1975, amid economic turmoil and social upheaval in Italy, they register their company. Giorgio Armani S.p.A. is born with little fanfare. No grand launch party, no champagne, just paperwork, signatures, and two men who refuse to compromise. The first office is modest, a single room near the heart of Milan's fashion district. Supplies are bought on credit, every lira matters. Armani arranges fabric swatches on the desk, while Galeotti negotiates with factories and suppliers. They take turns answering the phone. Doubt is a constant companion. Established houses dominate the market. Editors and buyers are skeptical of new names. The Milanese fashion circuit is both glamorous and unforgiving. If you fail, your name will be forgotten by next season. Yet there is an energy in the room. Galeotti pushes Armani to think bigger. Why not show both men's and women's collections? Why not take risks with tailoring, with color, with the very idea of a suit? Armani, cautious by nature, begins to catch Galeotti's enthusiasm. Deadlines loom. The night before their first presentation, Armani barely sleeps. Garments are ironed, hems checked one last time. There is no money for elaborate sets or hired celebrities. Everything depends on the clothes themselves. The debut show takes place in a bright, unadorned space. Models walk in suits that seem to float on their bodies. The fabrics are lighter, softer, almost fluid. Colors are subtle, tobacco, dove gray, cool blue, tones that whisper rather than shout. There are no flashy accessories, no extravagant gestures, just an uncompromising simplicity, elegant but understated. At first, the audience is unsure how to react. The shift is subtle but radical. Armani is not designing for spectacle, but for reality. The world he imagines is not about fantasy royalty. It is about modern men and women, their real lives, their real movements. Critical eyes linger on the details. The jackets are deconstructed, their structure stripped away. Shoulders are softer, more natural. Even skeptics admit the tailoring is precise, almost architectural. Whispers ripple through the audience. Is this the beginning of a new era? Word spreads quietly at first. A handful of buyers approach after the show, intrigued. Some editors scribble cautious praise, but for every admirer, there are doubters. Milan has seen too many hopeful new labels collapse within a year. Armani and Galeotti have little time to celebrate. Orders must be filled. Factories must be paid. Each piece is checked by Armani himself. He is relentless, sometimes to the point of obsession. Galeotti, meanwhile, hustles to secure more clients, more visibility. Every new boutique, every mention in the press is a victory. Competition is fierce. Established brands are not welcoming. Some buyers are openly dismissive. Rumors fly that Armani's business will not last the season. Galeotti laughs off the gossip, at least in public. Privately, he is anxious. There is so much to lose. In the evenings, the two men review sales lists and press clippings. Some are encouraging, others sting. Armani is not immune to criticism, but he does not waver. The goal is not to please everyone, but to establish a new language of elegance, one that is modern, versatile, and quietly powerful. There are moments of doubt. Suppliers call demanding payment. A major client cancels an order at the last minute. Galeotti reassures Armani, sometimes with bravado, sometimes with quiet confidence. They agree. To compromise now would threaten everything they have built. Slowly, momentum builds. A few influential fashion editors in Milan and Paris begin to take notice. Buyers from department stores in Germany and the US request private viewings. There is a sense that something is shifting, even if the rest of the industry is slow to acknowledge it. Each collection is a test, each review a referendum. Armani and Galeotti work side by side, united by a belief that fashion should not just decorate bodies, but reflect the times. They do not chase trends. They cultivate an identity, one not dependent on passing whims, but rooted in a consistent vision. Their partnership is not without strain. Differences in temperament sometimes lead to heated debates, especially under pressure, but both men know that neither could succeed alone. Armani brings the vision, Galeotti brings the courage. Together, they are more than the sum of their talents. By the end of the first year, Giorgio Armani S.p.A. is still small, but no longer invisible. There are whispers in the industry about the Armani look. There is talk of a new kind of Milanese chic, one that rejects extravagance and celebrates restraint. Still, the future is uncertain. Every day feels like a gamble. Armani's designs are admired, but the business remains fragile. Even small setbacks could spell disaster. Critics are waiting for the first misstep. But in Milan, in certain circles, something remarkable is happening. At dinner parties and in magazine offices, people are no longer asking who Armani is. They are asking what he will do next. It is a question even Armani cannot yet answer. But for the first time, he allows himself to imagine a future not as a cog in someone else's machine, but as the architect of his own. The city is watching, some with skepticism, others with curiosity. But for Armani and Galeotti, there is only one direction left: forward. Outside, Milan's streets are loud with the usual traffic. But in that modest office, something quiet and irreversible has begun. Sometimes revolutions do not start with fireworks. Sometimes They start with a silent vow between two men and a handful of unfinished sketches. Chapter 5: The Power of Partnership, Galeotti and Armani. Giorgio Armani's rise was never a solo act. At the heart of every revolution, there's a duo, one with vision and one who believes when no one else does. In Milan, Armani was the dreamer, precise and stubborn, a man who could argue for hours over the shade of grey in a suit lining. But every dreamer needs a force that moves dreams into reality. For Armani, that force was Sergio Galeotti. Galeotti was tall, sharp, irreverent. He had an instinct for business and a talent for reading people. Armani once described himself as shy, even withdrawn, but Galeotti could light up any room. Where Armani hesitated, Galeotti acted. Where Armani saw obstacles, Galeotti saw opportunity. The dynamic was clear to everyone who knew them. Armani spoke with his drawings and his silence. Galeotti spoke with his laughter, his phone calls, his relentless pursuit of the next big deal. They met by chance. Galeotti had first seen Armani's work in a Milan boutique. He was struck by the subtlety, the elegance, the hint of rebellion beneath the surface. He sought Armani out not just to compliment him, but to offer him something more: conviction. Galeotti told Armani that he was wasting his genius behind department store windows. Armani, ever cautious, pushed back. Galeotti insisted. Their partnership was not built on similarity, but on friction. They argued. Sometimes they shouted. Galeotti pushed Armani to take risks, to trust his instincts, to build something bigger than himself. Armani, in turn, kept the vision pure, refusing shortcuts, demanding perfection, refusing to chase trends. The arguments could be fierce, but the trust was absolute. They were partners in every sense. Each brought what the other lacked. Neither was complete alone. In the early days, the roles were sharply drawn. Armani was the artist, obsessing over fabrics, colors, fit. Galeotti ran the numbers, negotiated with suppliers, charmed investors. Armani avoided the spotlight. Galeotti courted it, knowing it could be used, knowing the world of fashion thrived on attention and whispers. Each morning, the routine was the same. Armani would arrive early, his sketches already taking shape. Galeotti would burst in, coffee in hand, phone pressed to his ear, already negotiating something Armani hadn't even considered yet. They worked longer hours than anyone else around them. Sometimes they barely spoke, each lost in his own lane. But at night, the lights often burned in the studio. Armani would fret over the curve of a lapel, the length of a sleeve. Galeotti would reassure or challenge or simply sit beside him in silence. There were sacrifices. Armani's social life shrank to almost nothing. Galeotti missed birthdays and anniversaries, but for both men, everything else faded next to their shared ambition. Galeotti understood Milan's elite in a way Armani never would. He could talk to bankers, models, journalists. He was the one who convinced buyers to take a chance on a new line from an unknown name. He smoothed over disasters, fixed problems before Armani even heard about them. Behind every brilliant show or magazine spread, Galeotti's fingerprints lingered, often invisible, but always there. Their differences became their greatest strength. Armani's discipline anchored the operation, ensuring the product was always impeccable. Galeotti's flair and restlessness pulled them into new markets, new challenges. If Armani was the architect, Galeotti was the builder, scaling walls no one else dared to climb. By the late 1970s, their formula began to show results. Armani's suits, clean, unstructured, impossibly elegant, caught the eye of stylists and celebrities. The designs looked effortless, but behind every jacket was a battle, a negotiation, a push and pull between formality and freedom. The business started to grow, not explosively, never recklessly, but steadily, with Galeotti's persistence opening doors and Armani's vision filling rooms. As their influence spread beyond Italy, a kind of myth began to build around them. Stories circulated about their arguments, their late-night sessions, their refusal to compromise. Each season brought new acclaim. Each collection made it harder for the established houses to ignore them. Fashion in the late 70s was still dominated by Paris and London, but Milan was changing, and Armani and Galeotti were at the center of its transformation. They didn't just sell clothes, they sold a new way of being, understated, modern, quietly powerful. The press began to take notice, dedicating more pages and more questions to the duo behind the brand. Still, outside success did not soften their debates. Galeotti would fight for a bolder ad campaign. Armani would refuse, worrying about losing control over the brand's soul. They argued about colors, about models, about the balance between risk and tradition. But beneath the arguments was something rare, a partnership built on absolute honesty. Neither man flattered the other. When they disagreed, they said so. For Armani, the work was everything. Year after year, he refined his vision, stripping away anything unnecessary. Galeotti, meanwhile, built the scaffolding that allowed that vision to reach the world. He handled the chaos. Armani shaped the silence. In private, their relationship was more complicated. The lines between business and personal life blurred and sometimes disappeared entirely. Friends noticed how they seemed to speak in code, to finish each other's sentences, to retreat from the crowd together at parties. Their closeness made the business possible, but sometimes it also made things tense. The pressure was constant. The stakes kept rising. As the brand grew, so did expectations. Each new collection had to outdo the last. Each risk could bring fortune or ruin. But as long as Galeotti and Armani faced the world together, it seemed there was nothing they could not overcome. Then, at the dawn of the new decade, something changed. Armani's designs were about to reach a level of fame neither man had imagined. A Hollywood film would soon put the Armani name on the lips of millions. The fashion world was beginning to understand that this was not just another trend, but the beginning of a new era. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Pressures inside and outside the company would test the partnership like never before, and tragedy, unimaginable, unexpected, was already casting its shadow. Sometimes, when two forces collide, they light up the world. Sometimes, that light is brief. The world was about to discover just how much depended on the delicate bond between Armani and Galeotti. Some partnerships change an industry. This one was about to change everything. But even the strongest bonds can break, and when they do, nothing is ever quite the same again. Chapter 6: Loss and Leadership. When death comes for someone we love, it does not knock gently. It crashes in, uninvited, unstoppable, shattering routine and order. In the spring of 1985, that is exactly what happened. The news arrived with a phone call. Sergio Galeotti, Armani's partner in business and life, was gone. He had been ill for some time, but the end felt sudden and unfair. Giorgio Armani, always composed, always in control, was left standing in the silence of his apartment. The city outside continued to move, but his world had stopped. For years, Galeotti had been the architect behind the empire's scaffolding. He managed the numbers, the negotiations, the delicate balance of personalities. Armani provided the vision, but Galeotti built the stage. Now that stage felt empty. Alone with his grief, Armani retreated from friends and from the parties they used to attend together. He no longer trusted himself to say the right words. Even surrounded by his loyal team, he felt exposed. People watched him carefully, waiting for a sign. Would the brand survive? Would Armani himself recover? In Milan, rumors traveled quickly. There were whispers about the future of the company, whispers about Armani's health and his ability to lead without Galeotti by his side. Some said the creative spark would fade. Others predicted a sale or a hostile takeover. Even Armani's competitors seemed to pause, waiting for a misstep. Grief is not tidy. It does not obey reason or the clock. Sometimes it crept in during meetings, arriving as a sharp ache behind Armani's ribs. Sometimes it struck in the small hours when he was the last man in the office and the city lights flickered against the windows. But the company would not wait for him to heal. The next collection always loomed. Deadlines arrived with no regard for mourning. For Armani, the challenge was now clear. He would have to become both the artist and the strategist. Every decision, creative or financial, rested on his shoulders alone. Each morning, he forced himself to walk into the office, to show strength even when he felt hollow inside. He dressed more carefully than before, as if the right suit might keep him from unraveling. The loss changed him. He became quieter, more private, but also more focused. When he felt paralyzed by uncertainty, he remembered conversations with Galeotti in the early days. They had often disagreed, but there was always one rule: the company's independence came first. No matter how tempting the offers, no matter how high the stakes, they had promised each other never to give up control. At night, Armani replayed old arguments in his head. He wondered what Galeotti would have said about the newest offer to buy the company. He conjured his partner's voice, sharp and practical. He listened for answers that could not come. Outside, the world moved on. Fashion changed at an unforgiving pace. Rivals were snapping at his heels. Designers old and new scrambled for headlines and for Hollywood's attention. Armani had to act. The business was growing faster than ever, but so was the pressure. He began to work even longer hours. The team noticed the change. Armani became relentless in his pursuit of perfection. Fabrics were re-examined, patterns revised, suppliers replaced. No one was allowed to make excuses. If the work was not up to standard, it had to be done again. Some employees found this new Armani intimidating. Others saw it as a kind of armor forged in the fires of loss. Those closest to him learned to read his silences. They understood that behind every stern command was a memory, a promise kept to someone no longer there. The press speculated constantly. Would this be the season Armani stumbled? Would grief cloud his judgment? Instead, the opposite happened. The company expanded rapidly. Armani launched new lines, each with its own distinct identity, but all unmistakably Armani. Emporio Armani for the young and bold. Armani jeans for a more casual client. Armani Casa for those who wanted to bring his signature style into their homes. Business analysts scratched their heads. Why take such risks? Why not consolidate and play it safe? But for Armani, standing still was not an option. The only way out of grief, he realized, was forward. Each new venture was a step away from the emptiness and a tribute to everything he and Galeotti had built together. Friends noticed the change. Armani was still the man who obsessed over the drape of a jacket, but now he obsessed over balance sheets as well. He joined meetings about real estate, licensing, and expansion into Asia and the United States. He demanded progress reports and studied them himself. The choices were bold, sometimes reckless, but they paid off. Armani's name appeared not just in fashion magazines, but in reports about global business trends. The American market, once closed to European designers, embraced the brand. Flagship stores opened in New York, London, Tokyo. Still, Armani's success did not erase the grief. In interviews, he spoke sparingly about Galeotti, choosing his words with care. Sometimes, he would lower his gaze, his voice tightening for just a moment before he pressed forward. He told reporters that work was his way of surviving. Privately, he confided that he still looked for Galeotti's reflection in the crowd at runway shows. Behind the scenes, there were moments when the pressure nearly broke him. Legal battles erupted over trademarks and counterfeits. Rivals copied his designs. A few longtime staff members left, unable to adjust to the new order. Each time, Armani felt the loss all over again. but the company kept growing. As the 80s drew to a close, the brand was stronger than ever. Armani had transformed personal pain into professional discipline. He moved from tragedy to triumph, but the journey was never easy or smooth. He learned to trust his instincts, even in the absence of his partner's counsel. On the 20th anniversary of the company's founding, Armani gathered his team for a quiet dinner. He spoke briefly, raising a glass in Galeotti's memory. There were no grand speeches, only a simple promise to protect the independence they had fought so hard to maintain. The world looked on and wondered, would Armani ever choose an heir, or would he rule alone until the end? Would his ambition consume him, or would it secure the future of his empire? No one, not even Armani himself, could answer that yet. One thing was clear: loss had redefined him, but it had not broken him. In the solitude of leadership, Armani discovered a new kind of strength. He was now both artist and architect, alone at the top of a mountain he and Galeotti had climbed together. The view was breathtaking, but the silence was profound. As Milan's lights flickered on, Armani made a decision. He would push the boundaries further, invest in new lines, new markets, bolder ideas, not in spite of the loss, but because of it. The world's most private designer was about to take his boldest risks yet. Alone, but never truly alone. The next chapter of Giorgio Armani's story would not be written in grief, but in defiance of it. What happens when a man with nothing left to lose decides he will lose nothing else? Armani was ready to show the world. Chapter 7: Redefining Fashion, the Armani Revolution. When the 80s dawned, Milan was humming with a new kind of energy. The city's streets teemed with ambition, echoing the wider world's hunger for change. In this feverish atmosphere, Giorgio Armani seized his moment. He was no longer simply a craftsman or a survivor. The man who once dressed mannequins in quiet corners now dressed the world's most powerful men and women. What Armani brought to fashion was not just a look, but a philosophy, a rebellion against excess. Shoulders softened, lines blurred, fabrics moved with the body, not against it. Armani's suits, almost weightless, signaled a seismic shift. Here was luxury for a new age, understated, relaxed, yet impossible to ignore. American movie screens soon flickered with this revolution. In 1980, Richard Gere stepped into character and into an Armani wardrobe in American Gigolo. It was more than a costume change, it was a cultural reset. Suddenly, every aspiring executive, every rising star wanted the same effortless power. The message was clear: true confidence did not shout, it whispered. Armani dressed Hollywood, but he also dressed Wall Street, London, and Tokyo. His name became code for intelligence and control, for an authority that did not need to beg for attention. Behind the scenes, designers and critics debated. Was this the end of glamour as the world knew it, or the beginning of something sharper, purer, more modern? Night after night, Armani's runway shows drew crowds that overflowed onto the Milanese sidewalks. There were no glitzy tricks, no theatrical flourishes. The drama was in the restraint. His models, strong and androgynous, glided down the runway in tailored jackets and fluid trousers. Photographers struggled to capture the clothes' quiet beauty. Journalists struggled to define them. The old language of luxury, ornate, ostentatious, no longer made sense. Armani spoke in the cleanest lines and softest shades. This vision spread faster than anyone predicted. Emporio Armani appeared on billboards and in magazines aimed at a younger, hungrier audience. The Armani eagle became a symbol of aspiration, visible from Manhattan to Hong Kong. In private, Giorgio Armani worked with relentless discipline. He demanded the same of his team. Nothing escaped his eye, not the cut of a lapel, not the lighting in a boutique, not the soundtrack of a show. Armani rewrote the rules of dressing, but also the rules of branding and retail. His name became a universe, not just a label stitched into a silk lining. Critics in Paris and New York watched as Milan, once considered a fashion backwater, claimed the spotlight. They wondered, was this Italian? Was it global? Armani answered without words, season after season, with clothing that slipped effortlessly across borders and generations. Celebrities flocked to his ateliers. Movie stars, models, politicians, they begged to be dressed by Armani. He obliged, but always on his own terms. There was no room for compromise, no patience for fleeting trends. Yet for all its reach, the Armani empire still felt personal. The designer's own reserve, his famous privacy, soaked into every collection. His stores, sleek, shadowed, precisely organized, were temples to order and calm. Even as commercial success exploded, the aesthetic remained cool and unyielding. Behind that quiet exterior, however, the business was roaring. Revenues surged. New lines appeared: Armani Jeans, Armani Exchange, Armani Casa, each carefully tailored to a different audience. Armani's vision found its way into denim, home decor, even restaurants. Competitors took notice. The luxury world, long dominated by family-run houses and private ateliers, was changing. In Paris, powerful conglomerates began snapping up independent brands. The age of the lone, visionary designer was under threat from corporate logic and global scale. Offers arrived at the Armani headquarters, some whispered, some blunt. There were proposals for mergers, for buyouts, for joint ventures. The numbers on these contracts were staggering. Armani listened, but refused to bend. He watched as rivals sold stakes or surrendered control, always promising that nothing would change. Armani was not convinced. He believed that independence was more than a financial choice. It was the source of his power. Without it, the Armani style would dissolve, its meaning lost amid committees and quarterly reports. This stubbornness baffled some in the industry. Why not take the money and run? Why not let others shoulder the risk? Armani's answer was simple, a quiet conviction that his empire was, above all, personal. It was built by vision, not by votes. In the late 80s, Armani's influence became impossible to ignore. Catalogs and ad campaigns blanketed the world in a grayscale dream. Hollywood's red carpets gleamed with his designs. Boardrooms and ballots were filled with silhouettes shaped by his hand. And yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The luxury market was consolidating. Competitors grew bigger, richer, and less vulnerable each day. Armani's refusal to sell made him a rare holdout, a living challenge to the system. He was the last man standing on his own island, surrounded by waves of corporate ambition. Some wondered if he would hold out forever, or if the tide would finally sweep him away. But even in the darkness of growing pressure, Armani's resolve only seemed to harden. As the decade closed, the world of fashion was changed forever. Armani had recast luxury, stripping it of its fuss and filling it with confidence. His clothes moved with a new kind of freedom, and so did the people who wore them. But no empire, no matter how independent, stands untouched by time. The market's attention was shifting, and the vultures were circling closer. Armani faced his greatest challenge yet, not from a rival designer, but from the invisible forces of finance and global consolidation. Every choice now carried weight. Every collection was a reminder of what was at stake. As rival houses disappeared into corporate portfolios, a question hung in the air above Milan. Would Armani's empire remain unbreakable, or was the very independence he prized the greatest risk of all? In the shadows of his private office, Giorgio Armani prepared for battle once again. Not with fabric and thread this time, but with lawyers, bankers, and the unstoppable logic of big business. The revolution he started was now a race against time. The rules had changed. The next move would determine everything. Chapter 8: The Temptation to Sell, Independence Under Siege. Giorgio Armani walked the corridors of power alone. By the early 1990s, his name was not just a brand, it was a fortress. Inside, he moved with quiet precision, surrounded by sketches, fabric swatches, and the soft echo of his own ambition. Yet outside, the world was changing at a pace even he could barely control. Global luxury was no longer a private club. Overnight, the industry became a battlefield, with banks, billionaires, and holding companies circling like sharks. Every week brought more headlines. Rival houses, once family-run, were being snapped up. A new era of conglomerates was rising, and the price tags were astronomical. Armani watched as friends and enemies alike surrendered to the logic of scale. Gucci, Versace, and even Saint Laurent, one by one they fell. Their founders celebrated new fortunes, but mourned lost autonomy. Armani understood the cost better than anyone. Creative freedom, once absolute, now had a number. Every offer that crossed his desk was a test. Each contained the same seduction: security, power, and the promise of immortality. All he had to do was let go. But Armani could not betray his own instincts. He remembered what it felt like to have nothing but his eye and his judgment. He remembered the humiliation of being told he was just a window dresser. In boardrooms, he faced the same question, asked with cold politeness: why not cash out while the world still wants you? He had no answer that satisfied them. His personal philosophy was simple but unyielding. Fashion was not a product. It was a vision, and vision required control. Armani feared what came next if he opened the gates. Would his name survive the transition, or be hollowed out and sold in pieces? Would his clothes lose their meaning, reduced to just another line on a spreadsheet? The pressure built year after year. Private meetings grew tense. Trusted advisors, some who had been with him for decades, began to wonder aloud. They made their case with numbers and logic. If the world was consolidating, why risk being the last independent house standing? Every competitor that sold seemed to grow stronger. Only Armani remained unmoved. Family was no refuge. Relatives, sensing both opportunity and danger, offered their own opinions. Some urged him to secure the future, take the money, guarantee the brand's survival. Others pleaded for the opposite: don't compromise, don't become what you fought against. Armani listened, stone-faced, to every argument. He trusted his own voice above all. Meanwhile, the business kept growing. New lines, new stores, new audiences. Armani felt pride, but also anxiety. The machine was getting bigger. Mistakes now had higher stakes. In private, he confided his deepest worry. The world changed, but he had not. Could he adapt? Or was he risking everything for an idea that had outlived its time? Every season, rumors flared. Would this be the year Armani finally gives in? Investment bankers placed bets. Reporters called for comment, chasing every hint of a possible deal. Armani's responses were always the same: vague, polite, and utterly non-committal. Behind closed doors, he kept the pressure at arm's length. At night, he hardly slept. Inside the company, it became a mantra: we are not for sale, not now, not ever. But faith can become denial. Some insiders grew restless. They feared the future more than Armani did. What if something happened to him? What if the next financial crisis hit harder than the last? Who would steer the ship? And would there even be a ship to steer? Armani's absolute control was legendary, but also isolating. He approved every campaign, every collection, even the design of his stores. Some called it genius. Others, obsession. To Armani, it was his only guarantee. If the world was going to judge him, at least let it be on his terms. But the world did not wait. Rivals doubled their advertising budgets, opened lavish boutiques, and stormed into new markets. Armani held his ground, refusing to play by their rules. He refused to license his name to just anyone. Every expansion was deliberate, almost stubborn. He would not let outsiders dictate the pace. Those close to him saw the toll it took. Armani appeared in public, immaculate as always, but the weight was obvious in quiet moments. Privately, he spoke of legacy, but just as often, he spoke of fear. He feared faceless managers making decisions he could not undo. He feared seeing his signature turned into a logo stripped of meaning. By the late 1990s, the offers became more aggressive. Some were whispered. Some arrived in formal letters, stamped with the seals of global banks and luxury titans. The numbers were staggering, enough to make any reasonable founder blink. Armani did not blink. He read every offer, then filed them away, a record of what he had refused. The press, sensing blood in the water, speculated endlessly. If Armani would not sell, would someone force his hand? Was it arrogance or a kind of faith? The fashion world was split. Some quietly admired his stand. Others called him foolish, a relic holding back progress. Meanwhile, succession became the new obsession. Armani's private life, once off limits, was dissected for clues. Did he have an heir? Would he choose a protégé? Magazine profiles analyzed every gesture, every cryptic answer. The speculation was endless, and Armani did nothing to stop it. His answer, if he had one, was hidden behind a wall of discretion. In public, he spoke only of work. In private, he planned, but told almost no one. Even his closest allies sometimes wondered if he had a plan at all, or if he was making it up as he went along. By the end of the decade, the company was bigger than ever, but so was the uncertainty. Armani was still at the helm, steering through turbulence that would have unmoored lesser leaders. He navigated by instinct, not by consensus. Yet the world was not patient. Rivals who sold grew faster, richer, more global. Armani's independence, once an asset, now seemed to some like a liability. The next step would require more than stubbornness. It would demand a solution to the one problem money can't fix: time. At Armani's headquarters, the tension was palpable. The halls were silent, the staff on edge, waiting for a verdict that never came. Across Milan, the question was no longer just about selling, but about surviving. Could an empire built by one man's hand endure the future's storm? And as the century turned, a rumor caught fire, a rumor that this time Armani was preparing something none of his rivals had dared. Not a sale, not a surrender, but an answer to the question that haunted every independent house: what happens when the founder lets go? The answer was coming, but first, Armani would have to face the temptation one last time. Chapter 9: The Succession Dilemma. By the time the new century began, Giorgio Armani was no longer just a designer. He was a living legend. Reporters, investors, and even his competitors watched for any sign of a decision. Armani was past 60. Every public appearance now brought a new question beneath the surface. Who would take over his empire? It was more than idle gossip. In the luxury world, succession is the moment of truth. Many houses had stumbled, some had fallen in that crucial handover. Armani, fiercely private, offered no relief. He kept control of every detail. He retained absolute power and shared no roadmap. But time, as always, was moving forward. In private, advisors quietly reminded him that no dynasty lasts forever. Around him, the industry was changing fast. Huge conglomerates, led by LVMH and Kering, swallowed up independent brands. They promised stability, marketing muscle, and a plan for the future. Some argued that Armani should join them, accept their funding, pick a successor from their stable of executives. Others said he should groom a family member, following the traditions of Italian dynasties. But Armani was never one for tradition. His family was close, but not obvious heirs. His younger sister Rosanna had worked with him for decades, managing the company's theater productions and charities. His niece, Silvana, was talented, part of the business, but never positioned as a public face. There was also Roberta, another loyal niece, who played a key role behind the scenes. Yet Armani was not the patriarch of a vast family tree like the Agnellis or the Ferragamos. His circle was small and fiercely loyal, but none had been openly groomed for the throne. Rumors multiplied. Some said a secret protégé was waiting in the wings. Others claimed a sale was inevitable, that Armani's independence was a myth. Trusted aides came and went. Old friends watched from a distance. Even Armani's medical checkups became news. Tension grew inside the company. Executives whispered in corridors, speculating about their futures. Business journalists circled, hungry for any scrap of information. Armani, for his part, seemed unmoved. He kept his routines, arriving early at the headquarters, overseeing fittings, approving fabrics, even dictating ad campaigns. He refused to name a deputy. When asked directly, he offered only the faintest of smiles. Some saw this as arrogance, others as fear. In truth, it was something else, an unwillingness to let go, even as the world demanded answers. Behind closed doors, Armani considered every option. Sell to a rival, he recoiled at the thought. Appoint a family member, no one seemed ready or willing to bear that weight. Let a committee of managers govern after him. Armani distrusted committees. Every model, every invitation, every window display bore his touch. In his mind, the brand was not a separate thing. It was himself, projected on a global stage. Pressure increased with every passing year. The company was thriving, but the succession question threatened to overshadow every achievement. A misstep could destroy decades of work. Armani began to consult legal and financial advisors. He looked not just at fashion, but at other family empires, how they survived, where they failed. The single lesson was clear. In the end, it all hinged on the founder's last decisions. Board meetings stretched longer. Armani's closest lieutenants, including long-serving CEO Livio Proli, offered their guidance, but the final word always belonged to him. He listened to their arguments, weighed their concerns, then acted alone. Sometimes he would shadow his family members at work, studying their reactions, measuring their resolve. He spoke little about his own mortality, but the urgency was plain to anyone paying attention. By the late 2000s, the rumors reached fever pitch. Some predicted that Armani would finally sell, cashing out at the peak. Instead, he took an unexpected step. In conversations with lawyers and advisors, Armani began to lay the groundwork for something few in the industry had attempted, a foundation to safeguard the company. The plan was bold, even radical. The Armani Group would not pass to a single heir or be absorbed by a conglomerate. Instead, ownership would be placed in a trust. This would guarantee the company's independence. It would enshrine his values, protect employees, and preserve the brand's Italian identity. For months, the work happened in silence. Documents were drafted, revised, then locked away. Only a handful of insiders knew the full truth. Armani's family, once potential heirs, would become stewards, guardians, not rulers. The foundation would oversee the business, ensuring it stayed true to the founder's vision. Profits would fund not only future collections, but also cultural and social projects close to Armani's heart. The business press caught wind of the plan, fueling another cycle of speculation. Some insiders worried the structure was too complex, too untested. Would it really work? Had Armani secured his legacy or simply delayed the reckoning? Investors grumbled about the lack of a clear profit motive. Critics said it was a vanity project. But Armani, for once, seemed at peace. The empire he'd built would remain fiercely independent, protected from predators. The brand would never be just another cog in a giant machine. He had outmaneuvered the giants without ever raising his voice. In 2016, Armani broke his silence. At a press conference in Milan, he stood before a wall of cameras and announced the creation of the Giorgio Armani Foundation. He spoke simply, almost quietly. The company, he said, would stay private. Its mission was independence. Its legacy, Italian elegance and human dignity. There would be no sale, no public listing, no dynasty, only stewardship. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Some called him stubborn, others visionary, but all agreed this was Armani's final masterstroke. The foundation's details were complex, but the message was clear. Armani had closed the door on speculation, defied the logic of the market, and written his own ending. There was no clear successor, only a blueprint for collective responsibility. No family crown, only the founder's will and his values. The fashion world digested the news with a mix of awe and confusion. Other designers watched, some envious, some skeptical. Would the house outlast its creator or crumble without his guiding hand? Armani, now well into his 80s, remained at the helm. He still signed off on every campaign and every collection. He took pride in the new structure, but refused to step aside. He had solved the succession riddle, but not the mystery of himself. In the years that followed, the world watched for cracks. Rivals, some younger, some hungrier, chased trends and headlines. Armani, serene behind his designer glasses, played the long game. He had done what few could or dared. He had chosen legacy over transaction, principle over profit. Yet one question lingered, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. Had Armani truly found a way to make his empire immortal, or had he only bought the illusion of time? The answer would remain hidden, for now, behind the same wall of discretion that guarded every corner of his life. Chapter 10: Legacy of an Independent Emperor. In contemporary Milan, the Armani headquarters remain a monument to restraint. The glass and steel facade reflects not just the city around it, but the founder's precise vision. Step inside, and the atmosphere feels almost serene. There are no frantic meetings, no extravagant displays. The rhythm is quiet, but each detail matters. Armani's presence still guides the air, even if he no longer walks each corridor daily. In the world outside, luxury brands rise and fall. Giants merge, splinter, and chase quarterly targets. Most have been absorbed by sprawling conglomerates, their founders long gone or sidelined. Armani stands apart. The brand has resisted the gravitational pull of corporate giants. No parent company, no outside stakeholders. The signature still belongs to the founder himself. Even now, Giorgio Armani's signature style defines the house. The silhouette is unmistakable, precise tailoring, muted colors, effortless sophistication. He never gave in to fashion's seasonal hysteria or streetwear frenzies. Trends pass, but Armani's language remains the same. Cool, understated, always Italian. Visitors to Armani's flagship stores around the world sense this continuity. Each boutique feels less like a shop and more like a suite in a private residence. In Paris, in Tokyo, in New York, the message is universal, exquisite, but never loud. The brand's hotels, restaurants, and homes extend the same philosophy. Every pillow, every plate, every chair answers to one man's taste. Inside the company, the culture is famously demanding. Armani's standards set the tone, perfection in every stitch, every campaign, every word. New executives arrive with impressive resumes. Most find themselves learning, not leading. Armani's approval is still the final step before any product goes out the door. There are other houses where creative directors rotate like clockwork. Armani has steered his ship alone. His image, always in the same dark t-shirt, always with a measured smile, has become part of the brand. Employees and industry rivals alike call him the Emperor. The title fits. He built a kingdom with no court but his own. Today, the company's independence is its proudest asset. No other major Italian luxury house has avoided outside ownership for so long. Competitors study Armani's model for clues. Investors whisper about how much a sale might fetch. The answer is always the same: the company is not for sale. Many inside the industry struggle to grasp this. Why refuse an easy fortune? Why risk the brand's future on a foundation or a single man's will? Armani's answer has always been simple: independence is priceless. The house cannot be bought because it was never just a business. It is an idea as much as a brand. This philosophy shapes every decision. New products are tested not for maximum profit, but for authenticity. Expansion is measured, not frantic. Even as the company launches new lines or experiments with technology, the core remains unchanged. Armani refuses to dilute his vision for a quick payoff. In recent years, the fashion landscape has shifted again. Digital platforms, social media, and global crises have forced old brands to adapt or fade. Some doubted whether Armani's understated style could survive the Instagram era. Yet the opposite happened. For a generation saturated with noise, the brand's quiet power became a symbol of real luxury. The numbers tell their own story. The Armani Group sits among the most valuable private fashion companies in the world. Revenues remain strong, even in volatile markets. The flagship in Via Manzoni is a beacon for industry watchers. For now, the formula works. But inside the boardroom, questions remain. The man who refused to be replaced has not named a clear heir. The foundation structure is complex, designed to protect independence, but it is also untested. Employees, investors, and family alike wonder what the future holds. Will Armani's signature outlast the man himself? For many, the answer comes not in profits, but in ethos. Armani's true legacy is not a logo or a building. It is a way of seeing, a belief that elegance can be quiet, that power can wear a soft jacket, that an empire built on taste and discipline can resist the logic of markets. Some call this stubbornness, others call it genius. Either way, it is rare. In modern business, few founders get to control their destiny to the very end. Negotiations, mergers, and the pressures of scale grind down even the strongest ideals. Armani alone has managed to keep his house intact. The impact goes beyond fashion. For Italy, Armani is a national symbol, an ambassador of style and independence. For hundreds of young designers, his career offers a different blueprint. It proves that control and vision can coexist, even in an industry addicted to change. The outside world, meanwhile, continues to speculate. Will the Armani model survive a new generation? Can a company built on the eye and instincts of a single man endure without him? There are no easy answers. History has shown that most dynasties fade or are consumed by the giants that surround them. But for now, Armani's empire stands, not bought, not conquered, not diluted. As the fashion cycle spins ever faster, Armani's house remains a study in patience and conviction. His refusal to sell is not just a business move, it is a statement. Sometimes, the most powerful act is simply to say no. The legend continues, written not in headlines or viral moments, but in the cut of a jacket, the hush of a showroom, the unwavering hand of one quiet emperor. In a world that celebrates disruption, Armani's greatest achievement may be his refusal to be disrupted at all. The future, as always, is uncertain, but the blueprint he leaves behind is clear, if difficult to follow. To build something lasting, sometimes you must stand alone. In the story of Italian luxury, Giorgio Armani's independence is not just a footnote, it is the headline.